Welcome everyone to the Mind and Spirit interview series. I have the great pleasure to sit today with Luis Robledo and his wife Sasha, and they invited us to talk to them about their latest movie. It's The Song That Calls You Home that Polyband Mind and Spirit has just released last October in Germany. And it is a documentary on ayahuasca and plant medicine from the Amazon region. And I am so thrilled that I can sit here with you. Hello, welcome, the two of you.
Thank you.
Thank you very
I
much.
do have a lot of questions about the documentary and the movie to you. Because it's such a variety of topics that you covered in them, right? I mean, it's a very personal experience. It's also a scientific experience, and we have a lot of mystic in it too. So my first question is, though, how is your personal experience with ayahuasca? Or if you could maybe say, was the personal experience there first and then you decided, wow, I want to do a documentary on it? Or did you say, hey, I want to do this documentary and therefore I'm going to put myself into this experience? So maybe Luis, if you want to start.
Yes, so my first experience with ayahuasca was in 2013, and that's when I went down for 10 days and I did 6 ceremonies. And towards, I think it was my second to last ceremony, I had the vision that I was being called to make this movie for the mother, because my very first experiences with ayahuasca, I had a very, very strong connection with the spirit of ayahuasca, and we would talk and have these conversations, and it was just an amazing thing, and that was one of the last things that I heard from her to make this movie. And so I think a year after that, in 2014, that's when I officially started making the documentary. Initially, I actually was not ever planning on putting myself in it. That was never the idea. That kind of developed on its own, and especially once Sasha joined in, which was in 2016, then the film took on a whole new direction. And then I think it finally gelled up in 2018 when we connected with Vani Mangoni, who's my co-director in the movie. 2017. And that's when the film kind of just took its final kind of shaping phase. So it ended up being a very different movie than I ever set out to make.
So interesting, thank you. Sasha, so how come you got to be in the documentary, in the movie?
Well, thank you so much. I'm very happy you're here and that we're having this conversation, and thank you for traveling all the way to us. So I came to ayahuasca in 2015, also through the same place that Luis went to, and I never had any expectation of staying with the medicine or doing anything. I just had this idea, like, let me come fix my life so I can go back and live it. And what happened for me is that going back and living the life that I had prior to experience with the medicine was not an option. And so when we met, and a year later, Luis told me about this documentary he started, and it had a whole different title and all of that. And around that time, I started learning how to facilitate. And so for me, there was an personal interest in sharing with people and the viewers the world of the Shipibo people, because that's the lineage I've learned with and trained with. And the depth of their understanding of natural world and connection to the spirit through the master plants or through the spirit of ayahuasca, and the beauty of their world and their way of living and connecting with each other was really moving for me. And I felt very privileged that to even be exposed to this kind of knowledge. And so what happened for us as a collaboration, not only that we wanted to tell the story of the medicine, because there are a lot of ayahuasca films, but really touch into the topics of the Shipibo understanding. And they don't really call themselves shamans, they call themselves curanderos, which is the healers. And just to understand their way of relating to healing and this idea of becoming whole, which is not very different from Eastern philosophies or even quantum physics, as we then learned, you know, educated ourselves. So it was a little bit more of a thank you to them, and to continue there are not that many of them left, and so to just make sure that their legacy continues to live.
Great. Yeah, you're very open in the movie. Thank you for sharing so many personal things also. Luis, you have like very briefly just mentioned how, you know, you had the inspiration to make this documentary and then how things went on. Can you take us a little deeper behind the scenes? Like, how was the development of the documentary? How did it go?
So how it went is I got the commission from the spirit of the ayahuasca to make this movie, but I really didn't know where to start. So I think it was in 2014, about a little bit less than a year after I had that experience in the jungle, my good friend Joe Tafur, who I met at my first retreat there, who's also a doctor, a phenomenal human being, he's in the movie, and he was doing a talk, I think at UCLA or USC, I can't remember which one, but he invited me to the talk, and I'm like, hey man, can I film it? I'd be like, this could be like my first, I feel like this is like the opening of the movie, right? Like this feels right. And so he was like, well, I don't know, because, you know, I have to check with them and see if they have an issue with it. So anyway, he checked and he finagled it so that I could bring my camera. And that's kind of how the movie got started, with that first ayahuasca talk that Joe gave, which actually none of the dialogue ended up in the movie. Just the clip of him teaching is in the movie, but it got the movie on its way. Yeah. You know, and that was kind of, and then after that, things just started kind of lining up. Certain person that I was interested in interviewing would be in LA, and then it would work out. And that's where we ended up with doing the interview with Luis Tamani, because Sita organized it, and it would just, so everything just kind of started lining up. It really was, I really had no plan. I just kind of was trying to follow the spirit, I guess. And many times I had no idea where it was going, but it was just a matter of, you know, just continuing and being open to when the right opportunity is there, and to just go with it, right? So it was like a lot of invitations that had to be accepted, so to speak.
Yeah, great. Thank you for following.
I mean,
a lot of people have resistance, right? When door open, they rather shut them. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Great. So do you have an estimation how many times you went back and forth for?
So I mean, I've lost count.
So several.
But yeah, absolutely. But you know, but like every time there was like a big disappointment, something really amazing would happen afterwards. You know, like, and that's how. And she ended up on the film, and then, like I said, then the final big turn was when Vani joined the team, and then it was from there on. It was, wouldn't you say, it was just like a train moving forward? I was like kind of. Because it was, you know, after that it just kind of took a rhythm, and then that's when we did our final bit of shooting in Peru, which we got so much done in such a short period of time. I mean, all kinds of, because we had a big list of things that we wanted to do, especially telling the you know, the ceremony part, and having to shoot all that, which, you know, our you know, it wasn't a real ceremony. It was obviously shot and lit to tell the story, right? But it was really important to get it right and to make it so that the lighting would never get in the way. Like, we really went out of our way to make it as natural, and but a lot of that credit goes to Eduardo Cervelo, who's our cinematographer on the film, who did an amazing job lighting all those scenes. So it was, yeah, I think once we got the rhythm going, it was just kind of, you know, snowballed into, and then, so yeah, but it took a while, you know.
And it was definitely a personal test for sure. For all our characters, for so many things came up. So like, it's like, if we're still together after this, I mean, like, I think we passed the test. Like,
That's true. I mean,
intense.
so many setbacks, like, you know,
Yeah.
like having our equipment not allowed in and having to put down like a big amount of collateral because they wouldn't allow us to bring in the equipment. It was just like anything that could go wrong went wrong. And then when we were in the editing process, we were flying Vani to come in to do the final editing, and his visa got turned around.
Oh no.
So he couldn't ever come into the country, and to this day, you know, he's still not able to, and that was, you know, we had to adjust to that, so we ended up having to edit remotely. He was in Italy, and sometimes in Nicaragua, and I was here, and we were like tossing footage back and forth, and I mean, it was like you just had to, it was like jazz. You know, you just had to go with what is. I mean, kind of like life, right? To be able, I mean, that's kind of like the surrender to, it's like, okay, you know, this is inconvenient, clearly, but, you know, let's see how we can make this work. And that's not to say that there weren't moments of frustration where I was like, what the, you know. But there were more moments on the other side of that, of really great things that just happened.
Beautiful.
So, yeah.
Cool. Well, let's talk a little bit about ayahuasca. I found it interesting what you just mentioned, Sasha, when you said, I just wanted to be healed, right? Because I think that is ayahuasca, at least in Germany and I suppose in the US, it's very similar. It's become a hype, like very modern. You can go to parties and things like that where they do those ceremonies, and people are looking to be healed, to be enlightened, for some crazy magical things to happen. But what would you say? What is really, I mean, the movie obviously shows it very well, but maybe not everyone has seen it yet. So this is the big invitation to see it. But if you give a little spoiler, what do you think is like the intention that we need, or maybe not need, to drop into those ceremonies?
Well, okay.
Both of you.
I would say, like, for me, I think when it comes down to surrender, it comes down to kind of leaving all expectations behind, because the truth is that no two ceremonies are alike. Every experience is very different. So it's not something that you can even predict. Like, sometimes not even the amount will dictate the intensity of the experience. Sometimes you drink a lot and nothing happens. Sometimes you drink a little bit and you see the whole thing, right? So I think it's, that's the big theme for me, is surrender and just kind of flowing with things, no matter how uncomfortable or difficult they might get, right?
Well, for me, I think the difference with ayahuasca and like other psychedelic substances or mind-altering substances is that it's not for everybody. There's some counterindications that are very important to know, whether it's diet, physical conditions, mental conditions. And there's a reason why they call it a medicine, because it's not a magic pill to fix anything. And what I've learned, in a way, I went down and I was like, oh my God, I'm going to do this and I'm going to go through this, and no matter how intense, and I'm going to, you know, come out on the other side and everything's going to be great. And what I learned is that it can be great, and also what it did for me and for many people that I've experienced or facilitated their experiences is that it turns you back to you. So, like, you are the magic pill, and nothing is going to happen without your participation. The analogy that I like to give is that, for example, you may drink it, and a lot of times people say, but nothing happened, and I just vomited and had diarrhea all night, and I didn't get any insight or whatnot. And I think that that's the main difference, why indigenous say it's a medicine and not... like, it's not a guaranteed you take LSD and you know, like, okay, you have X amount of hours, this is your starting experience, this is the peak, this is how it ends, this is the dose, and we can predict all that. None of that is true with the medicine. We can't predict any of that. And so you know, you may have, like, you may vomit and have diarrhea and nothing, really see nothing or have any insight, but then you come out and you feel different. And I think that's the difference for experience with ayahuasca. And I think it also works on the calling, like, you know, am I really feeling called to it, like in some way that I know that this is for me? And I believe that that's sort of where the song That Calls You Home kind of plays into it. So we wanted to emphasize that it's not for everybody, and if it doesn't in any way resonate with you, then there's no right or wrong. It's just kind of like, you know, are you feeling called to it? And yeah, if the answer is yes, then for sure explore in a safe way. And also I think with the medicine, it's like what Luis said, like there's no expectation, but what I believe it gives us an insight is into the tools that we have. And maybe for somebody it becomes a spiritual practice, and maybe for somebody it becomes a once in a lifetime experience and they get everything they need in that one experience. And it's not so much about drinking it all the time or using it all the time, but I believe the medicine is love that helps us reconnect with that part of ourselves that is divine, that is boundless, and it just nudges us in that direction. And therefore there are things like very kind of tacky word integration, but I think that's the key with this kind of work, that something we need to do on the outside. So we go to the surgeon, and the surgeon does the surgery. It says like, okay, we replaced your heart, you have a new heart, now go live your life in a healthy way. So if you maintain the old habits that created the heart failure in the first place, you're inevitably going to come back. So that's kind of how the medicine works. It's a surgeon. It fixes us up in a way that maybe not how we expect it to do. So, and then it says, okay, and now your turn. You have the key. Here's the door. Here's the lock. Now you got to walk in a way.
Thank you. That's a beautiful metaphor. So
thank you.
So the surrender is probably the key to it. I think, do you experience or have you experienced that it's difficult for us Westerners to surrender because we're so, brought up in this society of higher, wider, farther. We want to have everything under control. We want to have success, like we strive for all that. And then to just drop everything and say, okay, I surrender to this. Do you find that possible in people, or is there a lot of still holding on?
Well, I mean, I think a lot of what you say is absolutely true, and I'll give you an example. I noticed when I started going to Peru that these shipibos, like the people that would work at the center, the shamans, I would see them just like laying in their hammock for like 2 hours at a time, and not doing anything. They weren't on their phone. They weren't reading a book. They weren't doing anything, you know. And it's funny because I caught myself with kind of having that Western mentality of like, look at us, I'm proud, I'm productive. You know what I mean? Like having that judgment. And then I was like, well, wait a second. You know, maybe there is a time to do this kind of thing. To just not. It's like a meditation. You know what I mean? And so it made me realize how much we go and go and go and go and go. And so to bring it back to your question, yes, I think it is incredibly, maybe not difficult, for some people difficult, but definitely challenging to even wait the 45 minutes in quiet before the medicine even kicks in. Like that, you know, to be able to just be like, okay, I can't look at my phone, I can't sing a song, I can't talk to anybody, I can't fidget, I can't do this, you know, to just have to sit there in silence and just waiting, you know, like that I found was like the first moment of, I was like, okay, there's gonna have to be a lot of letting go here, because I think a lot's gonna happen that I'm just gonna have to go with, or I might suffer, because that's the thing and if you resist what's coming, then there is a lot of suffering and there is pain involved.
Thank you.
You know?
I want to talk about the tribes a little bit. So I have a few different questions. The first would be, you gave the movie the song that calls you, the name, the song that calls you home, and you refer to those songs that accompany the ceremony, which I would suppose if you do it here or in Germany are probably not there because you don't have the authentic setting. So what was your experience with the song, and like when you first found out about those Icaros?
Yeah, so
right?
I'll let Sasha take the lead on this one because she sings Icaros actually herself.
Wow.
So yeah.
Yeah, well, thank you. Well, for me, though, like my first experience with the medicine was, at first night, I didn't have an experience. I was really nervous and like really holding. And when the flash of images started coming in, I was like, I can't do that. The second night was a little bit different. And when I started feeling the effects, around the time when they started singing, and with my eyes opened, I looked at the top of the maloka, the ceremonial structure, and the more powerful the sound was, the more potent the visual experience was and the sensational experience. And so that was the moment when something clicked. I'm like, oh, songs have something to do definitely with this experience. And then I had no idea what's happening. I didn't even do a lot of research on purpose. The first thought that I had was like, wow, I want to do whatever they're doing. Whatever they're doing is amazing. It's beautiful. And I could feel the healing energy of it. And then my first time, there were 4 shamans, 4 curandeiros singing. And it was unbelievable. When all 4 of them started singing, it just transformed everything. And the second time I had a profound experience understanding that the songs are doing something is when I had a very, very terrible experience thinking that I was dying or having a heart failure of some sorts. And one of the helpers came and she said, I'm going to take you to one of the shamans to help you. And I couldn't even like think of the ways, like how can somebody help me? They will sing to you. And I'm like, okay, I have no choice but to say okay, but I doubt that this is going to help. And it was like, my personal experience was like I was experiencing my own birth and rebirth in a different, renegotiated that traumatic experience of my birth into something more beautiful and different. And all of that was done through the song, and I couldn't explain it. Mm-hmm. But then like learning this, what they refer to as technology, through the sound, vibration, the word and intention, and how it all is put together, it directs the energy and it directs basically the medicine. And the medicine can't sing for itself, so therefore it's using the voices of people who cultivated and dedicated themselves into this path, which is not always easy, but to channel that energy, to allow that energy to come through them, through the voice and the melodies and the songs and concepts. Yeah.
Thank you. Wow. Yeah, for me that was totally new. I mean, I didn't know much about it before anyway, but what I've heard of those, ceremonies that they do in Germany, I've never heard of the songs, and that was really, and I think, that's an important thing to make it clear. Mm-hmm. That that is the intention also of the title.
It is like a surgical tool, because I remember in one ceremony there was a woman shaman who was singing, and every time she would hit this certain note, I would get like this, I would feel it like in my stomach, and I would feel like diarrhea was coming, and I was like, oh God, please stop singing that note, and then she would like keep hitting that note till eventually I had to run to the bathroom. Yeah. But it was like it was hitting me exactly in the stomach, and I was like, "Oh my God, this is gonna be bad." And
but it helped.
I mean, I ended up in the bathroom in time, so it was all okay. But I really felt it. That was the first time that I really felt the Icaro, physically in my body, and then many times in many other different ways as well. But
So how did the shamans react when you first came up with the idea of making a documentary?
Well, not so good. So my idea was to, because I kept going back to Peru, and I would bring my camera, and I always was trying to get an interview with Ricardo Amaringo. And he ran from me, he hid from me, like he didn't want to do it, but he didn't have the heart to tell me no, you know. So one day we had scheduled. He's like, okay, we're gonna do it at this day, 10 a.m. I'll see you here, blah blah blah. And so I finally got there, and there was no Ricardo. And so I started asking around. I'm like, where's Ricardo? And he's like, oh, he left town. He's gone for a week. You know, he's on his yearly vacation. Once a year he goes to Lima, you know, for a week. And so I was like, oh man, he took me. So I was like really, I was like, oh man, what am I gonna do? So I happened to be going to Cusco after spending that time at the ayahuasca retreat, because I needed a little bit of a padding before coming back to the States, because I had the experience of being in the Peru and then coming to the States, and it was very shocking, right? So I wanted to have that little bit of a window. So then I was like, okay, I'm there a week, I'll just fly back. So I actually flew back, I ambushed him, and then I got the interview. And we eventually ended up doing another interview with him a couple of years later when we all went back, because at that time Sasha wasn't involved and Vani wasn't either as well yet. But after we all came together, we got a chance to go back. And this time he was all into it. He gave us an hour and a half.
But
he put on the
knew
whole.
Us.
He had already known us. He was comfortable with us, and he knew that. Because, you know, he had been misquoted and all kinds of things in the past. So he was really, you know, kind of shy about putting himself out there, because he had, you know, especially with ayahuasca, it's amazing to me how even in Peru, like people from Lima don't know about ayahuasca and what an amazing heritage, you know, they come from. Like, it's just like, wow, you don't know. It's.
So did they actually end up watching the documentary? Do they have TVs there? That's really what I asked myself.
They do.
Are they technically equipped?
Yes.
Yes.
They have now they have Starlink. They have Starlink at New Around. Not yet. No. Oh, okay. Well, they're getting Starlink.
But they do have a TV.
They do have a TV, and they watch the World
everything.
Cup, all the games.
All right.
And
the documentary.
And they watch the documentary.
And how did they react?
I think it's all been positive, wouldn't you say?
Well, actually, so we filmed our last filming was in 2018 in Nirerao and Ayamadre, and then when we brought all the footage from Peru, we edited to a rough cut, and then we got to a stumbling point. We needed more financing, so we went to Spain. And presented a rough cut of the film at the World Ayahuasca Conference in Girona, Spain. And it was amazing because a lot of tribes came from Brazil, from Colombia, from Peru, and Ricardo was one of the Shipibo representatives. And so it was amazing for us because we actually filled the theater. It was packed, and before we started the screening, he sang a song. He sang an Icaro to sort of bless the space, and they really loved the film. And so afterwards, he was like, okay, but he's like, you have to talk more about the songs. This is what's important. So we're like, okay.
Yeah, he gave us
He's
notes.
like,
Yeah,
has to be more songs. Yeah.
Yeah.
So after that, I think he felt... He already knew us personally. He married us, and you know, we've established a personal relationship with them. But I think it was really important for us to show him our intention, and because I mean, the way I think about it, like they have been so mistreated in the past, you know, and like now sharing their medicine, which is their treasure. I think it requires a lot of trust, and I think it was really good for us to have him, to see what we've done, kind of like what he entrusted us with and said to us, to like have that direct experience. And we sent a DVD, which they did. It happened during COVID though. They had very like few pasajeros like staying there. and they did like a private screening in their lounge. They have like a little lounge area, so they did and they sent us a picture of like them sitting all together in the lounge and like having the title of the film on the screen.
Yeah,
really
I think that was a good,
Yeah.
a very important turning point, because I think that he understood that we were going to approach it with, you know, with respect. And yeah, and like he just said, you need to talk more about the songs and about the plants. This is like, okay,
And
copy that.
And Estella too, because she sent us. They took a picture when they received the DVD. They took a picture. She and her kids. So the little Nimias, the little boy who's talking to the camera, is her son. And so they watched the film too. And they sent us a picture of Estella with her kids, and they were holding like the DVD, which was really moving for us, because we were hoping that also they're trusted people, and that if people are considering going to Peru, at least they have a source to who they can go to. And we were hoping that we knew that they had real big challenges during COVID, that it helps them somehow to get visibility, so people donated a lot to, so we were pleased with that.
And I think a lot of people have, from what I understand, have gone down to Niwarau, you know, from watching the film and being inspired by it. So that's, when I hear that, that's amazing for me.
Well, that's so beautiful to hear, you know, that the movie actually is working kind of like a bridge, you know, between the tribes, but then also people that are interested. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you
for having me, for giving us so many insights to the movies, and everyone who hasn't watched it, please watch it. And I wish you a nice afternoon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you guys.
Yeah.